So I'm delighted to have a conversation today with some amazing organizers who work with Journey for Justice Alliance. I want to first invite Jitu Brown to introduce yourself, Jitu, and a little bit of your story, and introduce your colleagues and a sense of the work that you do and the challenges that you face.
Absolutely. So good morning, everyone. My name is Jitu Brown. I serve the Journey for Justice Alliance as its national director. I'm a community organizer, originally from the south side of Chicago. Love brought me on the west side, so I live on the west side now. But I've been an organizer most of my adult life. Being a community organizer was not like a childhood dream of mine. I just knew that I was going to play defensive end for the Chicago Bears. Ended up getting a pro tryout and knew within 1 week that I needed a career change. So was really blessed to start volunteering with Chicago's oldest Black-led organizing group, directly out of the movement of the 60s, the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, better known as COCO. And that's where I developed my philosophy for independent Black-led organizing, power building, deep relationship building, and also working in coalition with folks across race while maintaining our integrity around racial justice. So I always call myself a proud son of COCO. I was the education organizer at COCO. For many years, I was a volunteer or board member. I joined the staff in 2006 as the education organizer. And in 2012, 2013, due to a lot of relationships that were developed with organizers around the country, at that time, like Miss Sheree from Eupora, Mississippi, who's on the call, Sharon Smith from Newark, New Jersey, Zakia Ansari from Brooklyn, New York, Jonathan Stiff from Washington, D.C. We formed the Journey for Justice Alliance. We formed the Journey for Justice Alliance because our communities were being ravaged by school privatization. They had been closing schools in Chicago as early as 1999. And we knew, based on the neighborhood I lived in and worked in, that school closings was not about improving education outcomes for Black children. It was about reshaping the urban landscape. So everywhere where schools closed, we also saw the loss of affordable housing. And so we took that understanding to other cities based on our fight in Chicago in 2004. And so as other organizers were faced with this dilemma, we realized that we'd be stronger fighting together than being isolated. So again, in 2012, 2013, we formed the Journey for Justice Alliance. We started with 12 cities and soon realized that while we agree on what we're against, we have to also organize for what we're for. So we began to develop, we very quickly developed a platform around education equity, understanding that the biggest problem in America's education is its refusal to face itself, the refusal to confront the fact that this system has never desired to educate Black, Brown, and Native American families in a way, anywhere that's acceptable. So we built our platform and began to really deepen our capacity to organize. Our primary methodology to create change is community organizing, because we understand that every right that we have, the reason I can walk into a Walgreens and nobody stops me at the door because of the color of my skin is because of community organizing. The reason why women can be presidents of corporations or countries now is because of community organizing. But for Black communities in particular, community organizing has been murdered out of our neighborhoods. The response to community organizing in Black communities by the American government has always been violent, whether that violence has been physical, whether that violence has been economic by starving organizations, incarcerating people as political prisoners. The response to us building power to try to get a sense of peace and healing in our communities has always been violent. So we see Journey for Justice as a key component to the revitalizing of organizing in Black communities. You know, you can kill one Malcolm X, you can put in jail one freedom fighter, but you can't kill 1,000 Malcolm X's. You can't kill 1,000 Harriet Tubmans. And so we believe that that's our work to revitalize the spirit of community organizing. And I'm really glad that these folks are on the call, because these are some of the most powerful organizers that I know, folks that are building power, often, with a volunteer base, but have won significant victories. And we think that now that we have a membership of 36 cities and growing, that our members all over the country should have enough resources to be able to staff up, to be able to have an executive director and a couple of organizers, to be able to have office space, to be able to actually fund campaigns. And I want to reiterate, many of these people have won campaigns with no money, right? Just off the will of people to say they're going to be treated with dignity and respect. So I'm honored to be in alliance with these sisters that are on the call, and have deep respect for their commitment and their capacity if they could just get support. So that's me. That's who Journey for Justice is. And I'll pass the mic.
All right, we'd love to hear from other organizers on the call, particularly what's it like outside the big cities? What's it like in some of the smaller communities where you work? What inspires you in these hard times, and what are the challenges as leaders?
Hi, my name is Anika Whitfield from Grassroots, Arkansas. I'm here in Little Rock, Arkansas, which happens to be the capital city. But I can tell you that we are a big town in a small state. And so one of our greatest challenges, as G2 shared, is that we have a public school system, particularly even here in Little Rock, that the majority of the students come from low income to poor family homes, and disproportionately are African American and or Latinx, and don't have that type of voice or representation politically, right? And so when we go to bat for our children, for instance, right now we have a mixture of face-to-face. We've been forced to go to face-to-face, and some people had the options to opt out for virtual. The challenge is that our educators are being made and forced to teach both, which is virtually impossible. To try to teach virtually in a classroom where they're also supposed to be teaching face-to-face. And the parents of low income and poor children are having the worst time of all, because they don't have computers at home, or computers or tablets at home. They don't have ease of access to having somebody to be able to stay at home while they're also in our state being forced to go back to work or be evicted from their homes. And so the quality of life, so many tensions that we are faced, that many other people in our city have the luxury and the privilege of not experiencing and not understanding. And so when we are looking for solidarity, when we're looking for our voices to be heard, they get squashed by the Walton Family Foundation. They get squashed by the Stevens, people that are profiting off of the backs of our children, off of our tax dollars while they are evading taxes. And so we certainly not only need resources, but we absolutely need strong allies nationally to help lift the voices of the people who have been crying out for far too long.
Anika, what kind of support would you want to call on national allies to do? Is your message for your state legislature? Is it for local school boards? Where do you see the center of power in terms of making change, at least in the near term, in terms of computer and internet access, support for families in these just wild times? Where do we even start? You mentioned so much.
Yes. So I can tell you on a national level, my personal and many of our parents' personal love would be for people to let Walmart know that no matter how many TikToks they buy, TikToks, no matter how many storefront Walmarts they put up, that there is nothing more valuable than human life. There is nothing more valuable than working in and with community and respecting the environment, so that everyone really has not only the right to live, but can live well. We know that the Waltons hire the majority of African Americans in this country, and that those persons that they have hired are making low wages, and also many of them have no health insurance. So in a time of COVID, these parents who are also being forced to work recognize that they're being forced to send their children to schools and don't have health insurance to be able to take care of themselves or their children, and yet they are working. And so when it comes time to look at their housing, their landlords are saying, or their mortgage companies are saying, but you are employed, why can't you pay us? So we've got a governor who works on the side of big business, who works on their side and says, refuses to have an eviction moratorium. So I think if we really touch, hit, get the attention of the people who are really shaking or puppeting all of the political leaders in our state. The state of Arkansas has, again, state control in the Little Rock School District. So our governor and our commissioner of education, or secretary of education, is controlling what happens in the lives of our community. And guess who they listen to? The Stevens and the Waltons and the Dillards. And so I think on a national front, if we could get a boycott against the Waltons, if we could get more public exposure to the evils that they are doing, and all of the people that are financially benefiting from the suffering of Black, Latinx, and Indigenous peoples. I've said a lot, and I would like to leave room for others to share as well.
Thank you. We'd love to hear from
Hi,
you.
good morning. Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Okay,
Yes.
Good. Good morning. My name is Christy Rosales Fajardo. I am the director of El Pueblo Nola Village in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I predominantly work with Latinx, undocumented, Black and Brown families and youth here in New Orleans to lift a voice in education, in civic, justice with the immigration law, with the crime on Black youth. And we work, and I've been working with this. I founded this organization in 2018. Until today, have absolutely no funding whatsoever to do the work that I need to do. We have one, and it has been due to a lot of the support. We have gotten a lot of support just to know the narrative of what's going on nationally from Journey for Justice. So I'm really thankful for that. I'm thankful for being on this call because we get to share what's happening and getting support from, my brothers and sisters in other states and what's happening there, because this is what usually is going to happen in the South, because we're the last to get everything or to know the information that's out there. So a lot of the struggles that we have also with education, with the discrimination of our folks, with ICE raids, with, right now with the hurricanes and, the devastation, and with the pandemic, where our folks haven't even been counted for as far as like having any kind of support from the government, not being counted for as people, not having employment, being pushed out. So we've been seeing we feel like we have the hardest of the hardest trying to support. And so also in the organization is creating that support system with food banks, drives, backpack support, enrolling kids in school, making sure the parents have a voice in school. But right now it's that a lot of this work comes directly out of our funding, because we are looked at the troublemakers. We are identified when we are trying to voice for our families and our children. We're labeled as the troublemakers. But and so I always look to partner up with an organization that's supporting me, even if it's emotionally. And I know that, Brother G2 and Miss Sharon in New Jersey, everyone is trying to help me figure out how to get support. So in the pandemic, they were able to send out stuff to help us with our community. Cleaning supplies and things because we don't have where to go to. I can't go to, my sister Anika said, to the Walton Foundation, say, hey, I'm helping undocumented folks to talk about English language rights, right? Because they don't want us to know these things. They don't want us to know. So there's no mainstream for a lot of organizations like myself, especially out here in the South, that we can go and ask for support. And we are in dire need of support, because not only the financial support, but also the mental support that we need just to do this work. So as organizers, there's so many battles that we take for our community that it ended up taking a toll on us personally as organizer. So then I question myself, are we doing all this good work on the cost of what? Is it our health? Is it our mental health? Or is it, our physical health? And we just, I want to make sure that when we are supporting our community, that as organizers, as group, that we also have all of the support that we need, including financial, including mental support, to be able to do this kind of work, because we are the frontliners of every heavy hitter that's happening. Everything that has happened in our community, we are the first one to respond. Is it with food or water or anything that the community needs? They're not going to, governmental institutions to get support. They're coming to these home-based, small, community organizations that we're their main support for everything. So as organization, we need to have stable, like the stable foundation, because if we don't have it, then how can we support our community? And we are targeted, definitely targeted by, the things that surround us, school, government, and different things like ICE and raids and school closure and school push out to our children. So we are the first one that sees, and we're the first one to respond.
Secky, can I add? Yeah, and I think Christy raises an important point. When disaster strikes, right? Whether it's a hurricane, we saw this in Katrina, we saw this in Maria, we saw this now with this pandemic. Community-based organizations are where people go. A doctor from Northwestern University had a call with us, many of us that are on here now, and he said the most important people during COVID are you. He said the community-based organizations, because he said the healthcare is racist. So many of our people don't have healthcare, or when they go to the hospital, they're not believed. So the way to keep Black people safe from COVID is to not get it. So one of the things that we did is we started an initiative called Clarity and Courage, where we had our members on a Zoom call with doctors to really give a sense of the science and how can we be aware of the danger, and then what protections can we take to make sure that we are active. And so one of the things we started from that is called Justice Serves, where we began doing mutual aid projects in several different cities. And we started a fundraising campaign with the Shot Foundation called the Loving Cities Rapid Response Fund. And we're able to get many grants out to folks to be able to do that work. For example, in Chicago with Cocoa, we've given out over 12,000 bags. It's youth-led. It's bags of food from urban farms, as well as household supplies. And so this effort is also being done, as Christy said, in New Orleans and several other cities. We're launching another project called Justice Schools, because we don't know in what form public schools will return. We're going to organize to make it equitable, but our children also need a safe way for them to be able to see each other, to interact. And so we're going to be using the original CDC guidelines to create some face-to-face opportunities in the spirit of freedom schools or shoelays at the end of the Black Power movement. Independent schools where young people got to have experiences that help them process what they are going through, but also build a sense of political understanding of what their role is in the world, to build a sense of identity, purpose, and direction. It's critical at this moment. So community-based organizations have a very serious role to play. And so those are two programs that we've started in several cities to begin to stake our claim in our neighborhoods. So I just wanted to add that in regards to what Christy was saying.
Well, thanks. And Christy's right. You all are the frontliners, and you're causing the good kind of trouble when you're troublemakers. G2's point that we don't know how public schools will return, maybe this is an opening to change the future path of history and have the kinds of schools that all our children deserve. I'd love to hear from others what your strategies are and what's giving you hope because you're up against a lot.
Hi, so I'm Kandice. I'm actually one of the members of one of the newer orgs to join Journey for Justice. And we were actually a bunch of, I'm the lead organizer for Black Lives Matter Houston. And I'm a registered nurse. I grew up in the same conditions that many of the kids were trying to organize for, grew up in. And without education, I would be stuck, right? So I feel like the reason that I am able to push against oppression is because I've gotten that education. Every Black and brown child deserves that chance. So there is the usual things happening in Houston. We've got a huge, it's called Greater Houston Partnership, and it's a bunch of extremely wealthy white men who are profiting off of Black and brown bodies in every way possible, including the charter industry. And they are a force to be reckoned with. They have got endless funds, right? So we all knew about G2 because we all believe in education. We all knew about Journey for Justice. We got to the point where we were like, we just don't know what to do, where to go from here. So we reached out to, and when I say we know G2, like we are fans, right? And so we reached out and we didn't know how it was going to go. And I was just like, okay, so all he can do is tell us no, right? But we're hearing no all the time. So let's shoot our shot, right? He said yes. And he came down and we had one of the most amazing organizing meetings in the Houston area around education. And we are, at this point, base building. And I think that G2 coming down was huge because Black and brown people needed to know here in Houston that somebody cared enough about them to make that trip. And I'm sorry, it makes me kind of emotional because our children need hope. Our parents need hope. I need hope. And G2 gave us that. He also gave me lots of information, place, like, and a sense of community, a feeling of community that you can't put a dollar amount on. But speaking of dollars, we take money out of our pockets to organize for our kids because they're our kids. And we could do so much more, if people understood the value of these young, brilliant Black and brown minds, like Journey for Justice does, and the community that I've been welcomed into with no questions, just sister, come on, you believe, and so that has been amazing. I am, a critical care nurse. I'm working in COVID right now. One of the things that we have been trying to organize is creating pods. A lot of our parents, they don't have internet access, no less a device for their children. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can allow as many children as possible to get that exposure that they need and still have some, interaction like Brother G2 was saying. So we're looking at maybe doing pods, and that looks like finding small houses in Black and brown areas, high concentration of Black and brown areas, doing short-term leases on these small houses, putting computers and a volunteer per one per 6 students, and helping them learn, because Black and brown parents are essential workers, and not only overcoming the financial issues that COVID has brought. I mean, we stay fighting finance, right? But it's just increased it exponentially. We think that if we can do something like this, then we give the parents a much needed break because now their kids are somewhere safe. That is one of the things that school offered that they don't have now. We have volunteers that are actually, educated in certain subjects that, some people struggle in. Like, I'm actually really good at chemistry and things like that. And I'm here to help those kids. All of these things, though, just the audacity to fight Texas came from Journey for Justice. And I cannot say enough good things about what these phenomenal people have done for us. And thank you for actually spending the time to hear what we're doing. I do greatly appreciate that. I'm not going to take up much more time, but I wanted to say that, and thank you guys so much. To my Journey for Justice family, thank you. Thank you very much.
It's what we do together, Kandice, what we do together.
Right on, right on. Y'all stay fighting.
Well, as we
All
go to
right.
Sharon, let me just say thanks, Kandice, for what you do as a frontline healthcare worker, and to lead the movement. And I'd love to hear y'all, what I hear y'all saying is organizing is very local. People turn for help very local, but that we're
Yes.
going to need a movement, local, to add up to something, because it's not only the Walmarts and the Dillards, it's our government, and there's some failures. And but you're giving me hope that there are new models, whether it's freedom schools or local pods. I love the notion of a pod where kids can be safe while parents are at work, where they can share internet and computer.
Right.
And it does make me wonder if we've come to a point in society where we do need to take things in our own hands. So,
Right.
Sharon, let me turn it over to you. Sharon, tell us about your work.
In Dallas?
Yes.
Dallas or the other Sharon?
Now, this you, Sharon.
Okay, I'm Sharon Wright Jackson. I'm also from Dallas. One of the things that I notice in our work, yes, it is very local, but it's very broad within Black and Brown communities in terms of developing the racial equity components. And when you go into racial equity work, in particular in the Dallas Independent School District, you're dealing with trauma from the Black community. See, there's no safe place. Our Black kids, our Black families, we're traumatized in the home. We're traumatized in the school. We're traumatized in the streets. We're traumatized in businesses. We're traumatized in corporate America. So one of the things that I was able to do through our Justice Serves and our community care programs and care packages was to be able to give our students a small sense of psychological relief among all of the computers, all of the constant pressures. Just being able to have a psychological relief, to be at home and to do a coloring book, you know, the types of things that kids should do as a part of their social emotional development. And we need resources to be able to build on those social emotional developments, those psychological developments, putting back into our kids in an education system, their innocence and their sense of safety. So that's what we need. We need more of the Justice Serves, the care packages, some of those resources to be able to touch those families one-on-one, to be able to drop information off to them about COVID-19 and the changes that are occurring and safe ways and the educational rights that parents have to make choices, whether they are going to stay home or going to be in the classroom environment. That is their choice, to make sure that they understand that they don't have to be forced to put their kids at risk because Governor Abbott and his team feels like everything should be normal in Texas. And so let's all make it look normal and push the schools open. So we need resources to give families the psychological support to be able to raise and rear and educate their children in a safe social development construct. So that's kind of where we are in Texas, you know, in dealing with putting those pieces in place, whether it's having the funding to advocate for additional counselors in the schools, additional community resources, and as I mentioned before, the need for the Justice Serves program that we in TOP took part in, and expand that a little bit more in a greater way. So that's, you know, and I'm so thankful that I was able to do that, you know, to just put together some things simple that puts a smile or gives a student a sense of wellness. It's amazing to see students' faces light up. So having more money and more resources to do that on a grander scale within the Dallas community is very vital. Thank you so much for just giving me an opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you for your leadership and for reminding us that we do have to build political power. We do have to hold corporations accountable, as Anika said, but ultimately, is it about whether our kids feel safe and whether families have choices and some ability to choose to protect their children. And that's why every parent gets up every day.
And Secky, if I could just, and I think it's important that in this moment, the work that Christy is doing, the work that Sharon is doing, the work that Anika is doing around, mutual aid, or we're calling it Justice Serves, is critical, not as an act of charity, but also as an act of solidarity and base building, right? I remember delivering a bag to a senior's home, and she said, "Baby, I'm not gonna forget y'all because y'all didn't forget me." And so those folks become members of our organization, because at this moment, when they realize that the hospital doesn't want to serve them, when they realize that the police are an occupying force in our communities, when they realize that this system doesn't care about our children, wants to throw our children into school, people are actually highly politicized. And so there's an opportunity to have conversations that you would have never had before, because you're actually meeting a basic need. Some people don't want to starve. They don't want to go to the grocery stores burned down in their neighborhood, like the grocery stores burned down in mine. And so being able to get a fresh bag of fruit and food by somebody that looks like you, that's organized, that cares about you, then says, well, you know what? I'm with y'all. And so that's why we felt like this was important in this moment, because of the strength of our opposition, that the only thing that's going to beat them is people power. And so we know that base building and in this moment is critical. So I want to add that.
Yeah, that's a key organizing point. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think this is Christy again. I think one of the main things that you said that's really important. I think too is that, one second, baby. Hold on. I got to answer this. You stop. Okay, you tell her stop. Okay. I have one of those pods in my house, so I have babies walking up to me. So, one of the things too, Brother G2, like you're saying, especially working with the undocumented community here in New Orleans, it has to be a safe space and a safe haven. So we are the one that have, like, it's not an option how we're going to provide food. We need to bake bread together. We need to make sure that we're there, because when it's a fight at school, because they're pushing my child out because they're doing something else, like right now we had 15 kids in my home, and I have to be protective, and I have to have all of these, the measurement, the temperature, and also be worried about COVID exposure, but I can't turn my babies out because parents are getting evicted and all of the things that are happening in our community, but we have to feed them, right? Because a lot of these families got, they're already doubled up there, and 3 families in one household. So when I look at, and I said, if it wasn't for the grant that I received with the Shots Foundation, which was our first grant ever, that we ever received, it was a small grant, but it made wonders, because we were able to make cultural relevant basket, not just food basket that anybody give you with canned goods and whoever eats it. We were able to put, guacamole, we were put, like avocado, we were able to put limes, because community knew that we knew how it is to come together. And so it's not a handout. And our community don't see it as a handout. They understand that is an essential part of just being a community, especially when you have folks from all over and you're being attacked from so many different fronts. Like I heard someone else say here, we're being attacked on so many different fronts that when we come together, we have to build. Community organizing is no longer just community organizing, it's the safe space in our community. Sometimes it's the only safe space that they have in our community. So if we don't have these, and we know, I'm not the only one. I mean, I have my sister Maria that's also here in New Orleans with Step Up Louisiana. other throughout the city, that we have, these safe spaces, because it can't just be one in one city. And that's why, like, it's really important to understand the national narrative, and so they can understand what we have, and then they can come with different forms of support for us, because we ourselves in this bowl right here, we can't see above our head until, people throw our lifelines for us. And that's what, like, Journey for Justice and other organizations that are coming in to, ground zero and supporting us. And that's how we feel about every organization in Journey for Justice. If we need to go to Mississippi to come bust, kick down school or shut it down, we're all going to move together, because that's how I just feel that support nationally, from the organization.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, speaking of Mississippi, Miss Sheree, you want to say a few words?
Oh, hi.
Hi.
This is Sheree, and Courtney, and we also have Kayla. I want to tell you a little about how we ended up in this work. So, in '97, I was running the Shoshone Paiute Indian Tribe drug rehab program in Fowler, Nevada, and I had this thing come about me, and it was the voice of my aunt saying, "It's time for you to return to Mississippi." And my husband decided he was going to get out of the military, so we ended up in Mississippi in '97. And we started seeing things inside of this rural community, and we decided that we wanted to make a change. So we started by it was a young man who had a knife that he had gotten from Boy Scout, and he was so infatuated that he had earned this little Boy Scout knife, so he took it to school to show his friends. So he ended up being suspended and expulsion out of 3rd grade for a year. And then we had this police officer that was white, whose son brought his dad's handgun to school, and he was given 1 week suspension and allowed to come back and go on field trips while he was suspended. We was the Black and brown community in this rural Mississippi area was infuriated. How dare you do this to a Black child, but you basically give this white child a slap on the wrist. And we organized and we started, and the parents decided that we wanted to name it Parents and Youth United for a Better Webster County. But the voice kept talking to me and said, "Look, you are the niece of Fannie Lou Hamer. You are doing the work that your aunt left behind, and you need to step up to the plate." So we did this, and we named it the Fannie Lou Hamer Center for Change. We started organizing and fighting for education justice. And our main fights have always been about the corporal punishment, because here in Mississippi, they love beating Black and brown children. So we started with the corporal punishment movement that we're still fighting right now. And we started with the school to prison pipeline, because our children were being pushed out of school, even in kindergarten. And this is what they continue to do to our young Black and brown children today. So with the equity, we're all on one school district, one superintendent, but we still have that struggle of the African American school gets nothing. You have your predominantly white schools that are built like colleges like Mississippi State and Ole Miss. And we never had a Black school board member ever in this little town. And then we pushed it, and we got one elected. In 2004, we got our first African American board member elected ever in this little town. This town that we live in called Euphoria is predominantly white. And the white power struggle here is harsh. You still, even in 2020, you have African American people that are afraid to speak out because those same Jim Crow laws that they used during the civil rights movement is still embedded inside of community, because you have such a poor community of color here, and they have to depend on credit from white stores because you don't have that many African American store owners. Now we're seeing a power struggle with our Arab brothers and sisters, because now they are taking over and treating us the same way that the white power struggle has treated us. We, right now, with the COVID-19 going on, school districts are using our young people. A lot of parents are afraid to send their children back to school. We have a school district that don't even have enough Chromebooks, iPads. You have a community that has less internet access. We don't have a lot of internet access here. You have a school district that, as of last week, that has started punishing parents and trying to force them to make their children come back to school by using the truancy law. Well, because we don't have an iPad for our children to connect to do the work, and then we're going to use the truancy law because you can't afford it. We also have a welfare system that are kicking parents off of the SNAP program. So you have children that can't get a proper meal. And I'm going to pass this on to my daughter.
Going back to what you said, as far as right now the pandemic is going, and the government is saying that the essential workers, the parents, are making either $1 or $1.50 too much to even receive food stamps, and they're also doing the same thing as a fallback on unemployment. They're saying that they're making $1 or $2 too much to receive basically government assistance. So right now, the organization by itself has been trying to pack lunches, to get lunches out to the students that are, homeschooling right now, to feed them, because a lot of the parents in this community don't have, a lot of funds coming in to feed their children breakfast and lunches. So right now we've been on the ground trying to make sure all of the young people who are school age are being fed breakfast and lunch. What else? Talk about how the internet. Okay. So as far as the internet, they set up internet downtown Euphoria, where predominantly it's a white community where their homes are condominiums, and for the students who are being homeschooled, that some of them are having to walk down to downtown to get on the internet to be able to get their schoolwork in. And back to the racism issue, we're having problems with the police officers where the kids are going to do their schoolwork. They're being followed, they're being threatened because they're down there in that area trying to get their schoolwork in. We had a couple of them that was not too long ago. Mom, remember the police attacked one of the young people because he was trying to explain to them that he was trying to do his schoolwork. They were kept approaching him hostile, and the young man had reported it to my mom. So right now we're working on getting that issue settled. And is Kayla on? And another thing,
a lot of the parents that do have access to what the school has provided, because of course now our school district has run out of the Chromebooks. They're charging them huge fees to rent these Chromebooks. Oh, yeah. So a lot of the parents, we've had to provide them with means, to pay for the Chromebooks. And if it wasn't for J4J providing us with resources, we don't know where we would be at this moment. Our organization took a hit when I found out I had breast cancer. So we're just starting to get back on our feet. We run low of resources. We try to do a lot of fundraising locally and on a national level. And it's right now I have 6 families that are homeless.
Yeah, due to COVID-19.
Due to COVID-19.
Kicking them out their homes, even though the standards right now states that they're not allowed to be evicted, but they're around here in this community, they're just doing what they want to. But we have I actually have 3 young ladies that been sleeping in the ditch right there by my apartment complex. So we've been working on trying to get them into a shelter, which here in this little small town of Beauport, Webster County, we don't have nothing but one homeless shelter, and it only holds 5 people at a time. So right now we're trying. It
closed,
and it just closed down.
And we're trying to get it. We're trying. Our organization has stepped up and said, "Look, give it to us, and let us run it, because it's needed." My heart breaks every night when we take this young lady food. I put her up for a couple of days in a hotel, but I just couldn't afford, to keep it that way. I get emotional about it, because it hurts my soul to see her raking up leaves and laying paper in a ditch in order to sleep at night.
Oh, you all truly are the front lines, as Christy said, of this work. And the trauma and safety issues make it hard to organize and hard for you all to stay healthy, right? As leaders in this. It's hard to sort out the many issues you all have raised today. And I want to invite just a couple minutes of closing thoughts. As organizing leaders, it feels to me that this is the moment in this country to lift the justice serves frame, which is we cannot continue to leave families and children behind. And we need to do that not as charity, but as G2 says, this is a community organizing tool. People are politicized. Folks are clear that the government has failed us and that corporations have a free ride, and that equity, particularly for our Black and Brown and Indigenous brothers and sisters, is not a happening thing. So it strikes me we need to call on more of us who are not in your communities to lean in, to build the resources and political commitment for you, and to help find the resources to do the work. I hope you can each find some hopefulness every day and some joy, because the work that you're facing is so incredibly difficult. We want to tell this story, and I hope today is just the beginning of us helping to tell the story. Let me just invite very quick closing remarks that you want to say to a nation of organizers that will read this, and for folks with resources who can help this work. So happy to take some last words here. There's so much more to be said. And so we cannot have this last few minutes be the end of the conversation.
Secky, can you all hear me?
Yeah, G2.
Maria, I'm gonna make this quick. I know you need to say something because Maria's been laying in the cut. But I will just say the big issue for Black people in the United States that's different than any other oppressed group is that what was seized from us was our sense of identity, purpose, and direction. That what was snatched from us was our sense of independence, self-determination. Unfortunately, that same disease that is embedded inside of racism infects philanthropy. And so what is important is not for people to think for us, because we can think for ourselves. But folks that say that they believe in justice have to have faith in our capacity to wage our own battles. That we know what the solutions are, but we are like, at this point, throwing rocks at tanks, because we are fighting with all that we have, but the forces we are fighting against are well-resourced, have communications infrastructure, they have fundraising infrastructure, they have a lot going for them, while what we have is the truth and the power of our spirit. So it's really important, not just for Justice Served, but the capacity building for many of our organizations to be able to get a storefront, to be able to hire a director and a couple of organizers is critical. And the challenge right now for people to say Black Lives Matter, then that means you must believe in a principle called Kujichagulia, self-determination, to define, name, and speak for ourselves instead of being defined, named, and spoken for by others. So we need funders to have faith in our capacity to win the fight. And so to fund that, as well as the programmatic things that we create. The Black Lives Matter must be more than a sign or a slogan on a website. It has to be a belief system that is demonstrated by resourcing, not other people managing us, not resourcing gatekeepers who keep us away from the source of power, but to resource groups like the ones you're looking at, because these are the people who are closest to the pain. The people that are closest to the pain must be closest to the power. And that's my 2 cents on that. My neighbor's mowing the grass, so that's what you all hear in the background. So I'm gonna go on mute.
Hey, it's Maria Harmon. I'm one of the co-founders and co-directors of Step Up Louisiana, and we're a proud member of the Journey for Justice Alliance. G2 has been around since the inception of Step Up Louisiana. He actually motivated me to go forward and partner with my colleague to even start Step Up. So I just appreciate the network J4J has provided for Step Up as far as support. And actually, I really know these people that's on this call with me, like Anika, Miss Sheree, and Kayla, and Miss Sharon, and Christy, of course. Christy and I have partnered together since 2018 in New Orleans, calling out the bad actors in our charter school system. New Orleans is the only 100% all charter school district in the country. You know, of course, that's not by mistake. It's all by design. It's been a master plan in the make since at least 2003, or maybe even in the late 90s. But now there is a privatization plan to take over predominantly Black school districts in Louisiana, because I'm based in Baton Rouge. I started Step Up in New Orleans, but we have 2 chapters in New Orleans and Baton Rouge, and we're also expanding to Jefferson Parish next year in 2021. In Orleans, Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish, and Jefferson Parish each have a high significant amount of Black and brown children in their school districts. And each of them are, New Orleans has been already completely taken over, but Baton Rouge and Jefferson Parish are going through a phase of charter expansion. They're targeting Jefferson Parish really hard with school closures, which makes absolutely no sense, because when you close that school, you're displacing these kids to merge with another school just to have a private entity like a charter management organization purchase that very same building that was closed to enroll those very same kids that were displaced in the first place. So it makes absolutely no sense, but it's all a real estate game that's happening. And like the bad actors that was mentioned before, the Waltons, the Koch brothers, all of these major billionaire entities are having a stronghold in the ed reformer movement and the privatization movement, which essentially exploits Black and brown families. And what I really don't like is how they are giving out a false sense of ownership to some of these communities and really taking advantage of that, and also at the same time excluding them out from really having a true voice in that space. And one thing we're dealing with right now in Baton Rouge is a bit of an upset with our leadership. We recently had our superintendent in East Baton Rouge Parish retire, and we just chose a new one, Miss Leslie Brown from from Broward County in Florida. And now she recently just put an emergency leave just now. So a lot of people are speculating, you know, what is going on, what is leadership going to look like for East Baton Rouge Parish. And it was the business community who completely took over that superintendent search earlier this year, which left us with the choices that the board made. And we really passed up on some very strong local leadership that could have taken our school district in the right direction. And the reason why there's so much controversy with the leadership in this process right now is because they want to completely charterize Baton Rouge like they did New Orleans, which is why it's such a big game right now. They're also doing the same thing in Jefferson Parish as well. It's happening in real time, and it's happening simultaneously. And again, I just want to raise Jefferson Parish, East Baton Rouge Parish, and Orleans Parish are the three largest school districts in the state of Louisiana. If they can completely privatize those school districts, they are really made in the bag. So,
Maria, thank you for your work. I've been following your work for some time, and appreciate that you are still there and still leading. And I apologize that we're at the top of the hour, and you all have been so generous with your time, given all that you're managing with your organizing and families and communities.